Hi, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of Parenting Through Entrepreneurship and Creativity. My name is Stephanie Simpson, aka Supermom, and I will be joined with my guest in a few minutes, Miss Racquel Boumah, and she's going to tell you a little bit about her journey as a momager and what it was like for her to in get her son on the path of entrepreneurship from a very early age, right? So we are running a little bit late. I think I'm about 4 minutes late, which isn't too bad, but still we've been having some technical difficulties behind the scenes, but I think we might be able to sort it out. So without much further delay. All right, one second. Miss up all of this. Just give me a few minutes. Have my guest join me. Okay, great. She's back. Okay, all right. Yes, there we go. All right, great. So good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Great, and you?
I'm doing excellent. It's very early in the morning in Las Vegas. The sun is not even out. The sun hasn't woken up
Oh
yet.
wow. Well,
Yes.
thank you for taking the time out to be with me here this morning.
Yes, I didn't know this was your first episode, so congratulations on that. That's
Thank
amazing.
you. Yes, yes. So as I was mentioning to our audience, um, this is one of several episodes, and we're doing it live here on Facebook, and then of course we'll have it on YouTube and Instagram Reels, right?
Awesome. Well, I'm very, very, very pleased. And thank you very much for allowing me to be your first guest. That's very exciting.
Yes, thank you too.
You're welcome.
So today I know I didn't go through with you on anything scripted because I wanted it to kind of flow. Um, and the purpose or the the avenue we're exploring here on this show is parenting through entrepreneurship. And it's one of the parenting techniques that I have adopted. And so I um, interviewing other momagers who have also adopted the parenting style of entrepreneurship and creativity as a way to teach their children life lessons, and some of the other values that they may not necessarily learn in through traditional schooling or other communities, right? So we want to kind of give our viewers a view of behind the scenes of what goes on in the community of momagers, right? Who are using entrepreneurship as a parenting tool, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm sure that it will be very helpful to people. I'm always getting questions like, "How do you do it?" So I'm sure
Yes,
that it's going to be very useful, a useful tool
yes,
for sure.
right, yes. So, could you tell us a little bit about yourself? When you got started with your son on his entrepreneurial journey, whose idea was it? Because it's a bit funny because in most cases it's a child's idea, but how did it come about? What were some of the first steps? What were some of the challenges you did I ask you 5 questions already? All right, maybe just start with the first one. Um, so tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started as a momager.
Okay, yeah, like you said, hello, listening audience. My name is Racquel Boumah. I know it says Watson on there, but my maiden name is Watson and my
Okay.
married name is Boumah, but I have never changed it. Actually, changed my married
Oh,
name.
okay.
Yes, and it's going on 11 years. I thought for our 10th anniversary that I had this whole thing planned. I was going to change my ID and everything around. Yeah, that didn't happen
Yes.
because I have
Oh
a
my.
little person.
Yes.
But anyway, no, I will eventually change it. But anyway, so yes, I am Racquel Boumah. My son is Justyn Boumah, and we are. Well, my husband is Gabonese, so he's from Central Africa, and we met in Atlanta. And we fell in love, and I went to Central Africa and I got married. And I've always been like this entrepreneur, wanting to just work for myself and create business. So while I was in Gabon, I had a few businesses that I actually created. And it's kind of interesting because looking back, I'm like, what in the world was I thinking? But Gabon is a primarily French country, and I am American.
Oh,
And Americans
yes.
don't always speak other languages, unfortunately.
Right.
And so French
Yes.
is not a language that I speak. Yet I'm still working through learning French. But anyway, like in that, I went to another country as a foreigner and I started a business and I didn't even speak the language. And so obviously entrepreneurship is just in my heart. It's just something that I see a problem and I want to fix it.
Right.
So, growing up, my parents always told me, that if you see a problem, it's not that everybody sees that problem. So, if you see that problem,
Right.
it's for you to fix it, And so,
Right.
I brought that into my life. And then when I found out I was pregnant, I came back to the US. We moved back to the US and started the process of my husband becoming a citizen. It's a very daunting process, just to let everybody know. It's not as easy
Yes.
as people think.
Yes. Yes.
And then I had this kid that I had prayed for and asked God for honestly, and I wanted to make sure that his life was used uniquely. And so, at a very, very young age, we started like looking into how he can, at a very young age, like in less than a month, he got actually hired to be on a TV show called The Game. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
Okay.
So very, very young. And acting is kind of like that entrepreneurship, right? You got to put yourself out there. You got
Mhm.
to pursue all the things that are coming at you. You have to have a lot of thick skin, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so that's kind of how it started. He was, like I said, very young, so it wasn't his idea. He didn't even know what he was doing.
Yeah.
um, and then as we went along with life, travel obviously is just in me, right? So I
Right.
go over to Africa, a country I've never been, where I don't speak the language, and I marry someone.
Yeah.
um, so I just have this burning desire for travel, and so when my son was about 6 months, I joined this amazing travel club. I mean, just like extraordinary travel club. My husband's family lives all over the world. And so I thought this is an amazing way for us to travel, see our family, and do it inexpensively. So
Right.
my son had his first passport before he was even 2 years old. Yes, before he was even 2 years old, right before his second birthday. And one of the trips we went on was to just Arizona, right? The neighboring state. And I was like, oh,
Yes.
Arizona is not going to be that amazing. It was an amazing trip. We had a wonderful time. And this is actually in my son's bio. So I saw him. We had this breakfast, and it was amazing breakfast. It was delicious. And my son is skipping along this pathway. And right in that moment, I think he was 2.5, I want to say, or maybe just turned 2. He's skipping along this pathway, and right there it just hit me. I was just like, he's going to change the world. I was like, this kid and everything that he's experienced and gone through in just 2 years is going to change, and I need to figure out how to do it. And
Yeah.
so we were on a plane about 6 months later, and I was feeling so frustrated because we had just came back from a whole trip from Europe. And I hate the devices. So the iPad and the iPhone and all of these
Yeah.
devices that kids are like attached to. And so I had went on this trip to Europe, and the first time I actually decided to give my son an iPad for this long journey, and I forgot to download an app. So I had
Ooh.
nothing for him to entertain himself for like the next 5 hours.
Wow.
Yes. And so I'm sitting there. He's like, 2 years old or whatever. And so he's starting to really recognize, when they're infants, you can give them some little medicine. Basically
Yeah.
make them go to sleep. But a 2 year old, they're starting to kind of figure themselves out, and they're like, why am I
Mm,
on this plane? What's going on? Why is it shaky? So he starts like basically
mm.
freaking out. And so, even though he had been traveling since a very young age, it scared him because he's just starting to recognize things.
Right.
And so, right then, when the iPad isn't working and all of this stuff, I start to like see visions in my mind. So, I am an artist by trade. So, I see things
Mhm.
just visually in my head. And I start seeing all of these like books that can help children calm down and relax, and all these pictures start floating in my head. I don't know if you've ever seen this J.K. Rollins. Have you ever seen her documentary?
Yes. Yeah.
So in one part, the animator or the filmmaker puts like she has all of these pictures like floating in her head. Like that's literally how I felt. And so that's where the Traveling Toddler series was born. But my son was only 2, and people were like, he's only 2. He can't write a book. And I was like, he can be the author of his own book. These are his words. Like he would say
Mhm.
these words. They weren't my words. I mean, yeah,
Right.
I had to help him, I had to aid and assist him,
Right.
but they were his experiences, and they were his like little words. And we would sit down together, and I'd say, hey Justyn, because he's 2,
Yeah.
which pictures do you like that you want in your coloring book? And he'd help me edit it. I'm an illustrator, so I illustrate the books and he colored them. And I told my mom at one point, I said, truly, honestly, I feel like this was what I was called to do, because I went searching after that experience on the plane.
Mhm.
I went searching for what I saw in my head. And I was just like,
Mhm.
where is it? Where is it for our next trip? And I couldn't find it. And I was so frustrated. And those words that came back to me from my family was, it's for you to change it, you know?
Right.
I was so frustrated. And no one else seemed to be bothered by, there was nothing besides the device to keep a kid entertained.
Yeah.
But what I but what I learned was three crayons, just three primary
Yes.
colors, and a coloring book can go a long way. And that's how we traveled for like a long time, like without the device, just him with coloring book and stickers. And I created a whole brand called the Traveling Toddler off of those things. And my son is the CEO of that brand. He was, like I said, he was 2 years old when we started and formed it. And he's been at business meetings, like literally 2 years old, sitting in Las Vegas in, urban chamber business meetings, because he's the CEO. And that's how it all started, was looking at who he was and who he was becoming and acting on that. And I tell
Right.
parents a lot of times, sometimes the kids are in the back seat. My son, he still sits in the back seat. He's only 6,
Yes.
and they're talking. They're saying all of
Right.
this stuff, and you listening and not tuning them out, being present, will change a
Yeah.
kid's life. Because
Yes.
you, as the momager, you have to manage what they have inside of them that they can't see yet.
Yes.
Right? And so
Right.
even at 2 years old, I saw that he had something. I didn't know what it was. I wasn't sure, but I knew that it was something. And as we started traveling, we started doing these things. So another thing that we did when he was 2, I think he was 2. I think he was 2. There was a huge storm that happened, and I'm not going to remember the name of the storm. Um, but it was a hurricane, and it was in Louisiana. And in Las Vegas, they were collecting items for the families. And so Justyn had just become potty trained. And I said to them, I said, are you guys looking for all items, or just like, these little, like food or something like that? They were
Mhm.
like, no, we're looking for everything. And so Justyn gave his diapers, right? Because he was potty trained. He's a big boy. He gave
Yeah.
his diapers to the victims of the hurricane. And they were actually so happy because, excuse me one second.
Right.
They were so happy because nobody had thought about the babies, because even in the fact that these hurricane families had this situation, the babies didn't have diapers,
Yeah.
and
So.
so
Mhm.
that was the first start of his theathropic mission, I
Mhm.
guess. That was the first one.
Yeah.
And since then we started a readathon. Justyn was reading when he was, I want to say like 18 months. He was very young when he started reading. And he just loved it. He loved to read and play with his friends, and it's just what he wanted to do. So we did this thing called the Readathon, around the world Readathon, because we travel around the world as the Traveling Toddler organization. And so we had all of these friends around the world who wanted to read as well. And so we, asked them to give to us. And then what we do is we get donations from Las Vegas and everywhere. And then we give money to either Las Vegas, or we give it in Gabon, which is my husband's country, my husband's home country. And so the readathon is going so well. We're getting all of these people from the US, and we're like, yeah, but we want people from other countries. So my sister's like, yeah, she went on a mission to South Africa. She's like, oh, definitely my friends in South Africa will read with us. And my husband's like, yeah, I have friends in Japan, they'll definitely read with us. So we asked them, and this is the response that we got, and we were dumbfounded. I lived in Gabon, a third world country, and I still was dumbfounded. So our South African friends write back and say, we're going to try to find a book in our community. We're like, try? Like, there's no library. There's no, well, the kids don't have books. What do you mean they
Wow.
don't have books? South
Wow.
Africa, a progressive
Yes,
country,
it
and
is. I've been
it's
there.
amazing, right? And so this community
Yes.
literally searched for 3 days to find one book that the kids could read for our readathon, and then they recorded it. And in Japan, our friends in Japan, the one lady was like, yeah, my daughter reads, she has books all the time, but she felt uncomfortable being on camera. So she asked her friends, and her friends were like, I can't even afford to read. And I'm like, you have to go and buy book. Like, what do you mean? Like, there's a library. And then in Nigeria, we found a classroom that that was reading their school books, like in school, like their textbooks in school, not
Right.
not like a reading book at home. So that
Right.
started a whole new mission because we're like, oh my gosh, a world without books? Like,
Books.
how does
Yeah.
that even exist? And then I started thinking about even my life in Gabon, in Libreville, the major city. I was like, hmm, there weren't any books in my home that, like, when I went to my family's home who had kids, there wasn't like a little library. I was like trying to think about community libraries in Gabon, and I was like, there weren't any. And that's like a major city, that's the capital. So I'm like, what about the little villages? And so that started us on, we have got to save the world, you know? And
Yeah.
so our readathon was going on, and everybody was like, my sister and other people were like, oh, you guys are a 501c3. Okay. And we're like, no, we're not, we're a for profit. And so
Mhm.
last year, everybody that I was talking to, other momagers, were like, yeah, we have 501c3s and we've had it since our child was 8 or, 7 or 9. And I was like, a kid can have a nonprofit? And they're like, yeah.
Yeah.
So we opened up our nonprofit, Heroes and Hearts, and my son just has a heart to give. When he was 4 during the pandemic, he's homeschooled, so he would
Yeah.
just see his friends. He called them his friends, the sanitation workers. That was all he could see because all of his friends were stuck at home, right? And so
Right.
he'd go out. It was very hot in Vegas, very, very hot. So my mom would like freeze water and give it to Justyn to go out and give it to the snacks and water to the sanitation workers. So that was his outside time, right? And so
Yeah.
he would like be so excited every Monday, he'd be running out with water and snacks. And so around, I want to say it was May, we saw all of these people being thanked, like the wonderful medical staff and all of these people being thanked because of what they were doing to help the pandemic. And Justyn was
Mhm.
like, but why aren't the sanitation workers being thanked? And my sister was like, oh, I don't know. I don't know why your friends, the sanitation workers, aren't being thanked, because he saw them every single Monday, just like
Right.
everybody else was working. And so he says, well, I want to thank them. So we
Mhm.
started working on a project called the Blessing Project to thank them. And we did, and the news picked it up, and it's been history ever since then. So we'll have our nonprofit for 1 year in March. And I just listened to him. I really
Right.
believe that this kid hears from God. I mean, just like the things that he's decided to do. And I'm like every other mom. I'm like, no, that does not need to happen. That's not true. You know what I'm saying? But then I
Yes.
take him up on it, and it's really needed in our community. And I'm just
Mhm.
shocked. I'm like, wow, this is needed in the community. And I never thought of it. So that's why I
Right.
always encourage parents is like, listen beyond the words because you're
Right.
the adult in the room. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Exactly.
listen beyond just the words. So
Yes.
I know I talked and talked and talked. So
No, no, no. You're right within. It's a 30-minute show, and we're at 24 minutes. So you did great. And I love um I love to hear the background story of how it all began. And I know you said it was your idea, right? But he's the one guiding it, right? And that is important, right? And just to elaborate a little bit more on some of the things you touched on, listening as a parent and being involved, right? And I think that's one of the things that parenting through entrepreneurship really allows you to do as a parent, is to be involved in your child's life in a way that and truly enhances their gifts, right? Truly helps them to tap into their creativity and kind of show up in the world as their true self, not just the person that society says they should be. All
Yeah.
right. And that is so important for our children. I think one of the challenges that many children face, and just to draw a little bit on my own story, my son, he has autism, and he did not fit into traditional schooling. He had a lot of problems fitting in, right? But it was only when I decided, okay, I'm going to homeschool him, or we're going to just work on what he knows, um, or what he's able to handle at this time. He then started to teach himself animation development, right? And now he has his own business where right now he's working on an animation series that, to help teach kids entrepreneurship, right? So he has been able to tap into his gift. And now
Right.
he's 13 years old, but he can pretty much animate anything, which is
Wow.
which is really amazing. He didn't go to school for this. It's just self-taught. And at the age of 13, he can create any type of animation. You could just ask him to do something and he could do it
Wow.
very quickly.
That's amazing.
So, yes, and that is why I wanted to start this talk show, so that, well, actually it's a video podcast, but I guess it's the same thing, right? But to help other parents see and understand um that a lot of what they're experiencing in the home, you're with your child, you know what their gifts are, and sometimes you might just be afraid to help them to tap into it
Yeah.
because you're worried about what people might think. Of course, people are going to have a bunch of questions, um and not everybody will see eye to eye with you, but at the end of the day, your child will find his or her own unique voice in this world,
Yeah.
and be able to stand out and change the world in such a powerful way. And
Yeah.
I mean, that is definitely a big plus, not just as a parent, but for your child, as you continue to prepare them for the real world, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I always talk about um you know helping children to find their own confidence and their own voice, especially in a changing world, in a world where they have to constantly adapt to changes. When your
Yeah.
child has confidence and they don't feel themselves stuck to some cookie cutter image of who they should be,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with those things. It's just that your child is a unique individual,
Yeah.
and he or she needs to find their own voice, and it's up to us as parents to help them to find that voice and to put the necessary structures in place so
Mm-hmm.
that they can develop those talents and
Yeah.
develop that voice. All
Yeah.
right.
I completely agree 110%. And although Traveling Toddler was my idea, Heroes and
Right.
Hearts is completely Justyn's passion project. He's done the
Right.
logo, he's done the name, like very, very specifically. But I agree with you 110%. And it's those conversations that your kids are having with themselves, with their dolls, with their Spider-Mans, with,
Right,
in the backseat of the car, that you have to captivate and turn
right,
it into something great.
right, right. Because you're the one with the power and the resources to make it happen, to channel that dream. And that is so important.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're at our 30-minute mark. Yes, and it was a I am thank you so much for being my first guest, coming on the show, sharing with my audience, and I will get the links from you for the different programs that you had mentioned, and then I will so that I could provide it to our because we're going to mail this out and some other things, right? So thanks again for joining us, for sharing with us. And is there any last words you want to give the viewers today?
I just want to say, passion projects and hearing the heart of your child is the easiest thing to becoming a mama manager. I think that people think it takes all of this stuff. And I mean, it does. You have to work hard at it, and it becomes
Yeah,
another job for sure, another
right,
10 jobs, right? But it doesn't
right,
have start off that way, especially if you
right,
have older children, if your child is not two and they
yeah,
can do things on their own. Don't force them into the mold that you think is going to make them and you the most money. Make sure that
right,
you're guiding them into the path in which they find the most exciting, that
yeah.
brings their eyes open, that makes them feel ignited inside. That is the ticket to being a great momager.
And thank you for that.
Welcome. You're
Right.
welcome.
So yes. So we're going to wrap up with the this first episode. I'm so excited. I have another something other moms who had agreed to come on the show. So it's gonna be quite it's gonna be quite a it's going to be a very colorful show. We're going to be showcasing momagers who have kids who are entrepreneurs from all different types of industries and ideas. And so we'll be able to get an idea of how all these talents kind of, present themselves so that you who are listening, you moms who are kind of on the sidelines when it comes to becoming a momager. You can start to pick up on these cues, right? I know it's some of you are listening and say, "Yeah, I remember my child doing that," or "I remember my child doing that." And that's how we begin to build on these resources to help other parents uh, channel their child's creativity and help them find their voice in this world. So thanks once again, and I will be sending you a message sometime today or tomorrow so that we can continue to, build on the community and, really provide that support for other momagers or potential momagers out there, because it's really a rewarding journey, right?
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree 110%. It's very rewarding.
Yes. All right. So thanks again, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you all for joining us on the first episode of the Super Momager show. And our topic of discussion for this series is parenting through entrepreneurship and creativity. Thanks once again, and have a blessed day. Bye.
Bye.